Connection is the live television program with Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. It's offering the community the opportunity to hear about efforts from City Hall and beyond. With Community Media Center, I'm your host, Linda Galash, and today we'll be welcoming as our guest City of Grand Rapids Fire Chief John Lehman. Chief Lehman will tell us about the importance of the fire department and particular concerns during this time of year. I also hear we might have a special guest joining the fire chief, so we're going to surprise you with that shortly. Also, later in the City Connection program, we provide a time with Mayor Bliss for your questions and comments. That's in the second half of the program, along with some questions and comments for Fire Chief Lehman, too. So if you want to take part in that conversation, you can send your questions or comments to cityconnection@grcmc.org. Also use Twitter. It's at GRTV Access or commenting on GRTV's Facebook page. City Connection is collaboration with Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids, broadcasting live today, December 6th. And it's here at Community Access Television Channel 24, live streaming at the Rapidian and at GRTV's Facebook page. And again, we'll be rebroadcasting this program throughout the month on cable GRTV's Channel 25. Now, in studio with me, it's Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. Welcome.
Yeah, good to be here as we finish up 2021.
Amazing.
Amazing. It's gone by so fast.
Time is just not measured in the same way it used to be ever since we entered a pandemic and survived that to a lot of degrees.
Yeah.
It is almost mid-December. It's winter, and today you know it a little bit. Today it feels like that other season that we have here in West Michigan. Brings to mind a little bit about information for folks that don't necessarily have shelter or homes. Yeah. And I know the city is trying to pick up the effort there on providing some more warming shelters and some other options for folks.
Yeah, so the city, similar to what we did last year, we are partnering again this year with Mel Trotter Ministries. So we will be working with them, unlike last year where we opened up space at the old Purple East building across from Hartside Park. This year, we secured some space with them over on Division. So a couple things that are different this year. One, it will be overflow space. So there's ample space for people to have some social distance. It'll be additional space throughout the night for people to come and sleep if they need shelter. But then we also worked with Mel Trotter to have the space open during the day. So there'll be a day center or warming space where people can come during the day and stay. And then also we added in lockers. So one thing that we heard from individuals in the community is that they needed space to store their belongings where they felt it was safe and secure. So we are also adding a spot for people to lock up their belongings if they need to do that. So that's one thing we're doing in partnership with Mel Trotter as we look at the winter to make sure that as it gets colder outside, people have a safe and a warm place to go. But that's just a part of some of the other work we're doing around supporting individuals who are experiencing homelessness and helping them get into really more stable housing. That's ultimately our goal. So we continue to have a contract with community builders. We're investing significantly into rapid rehousing. I'll wait till the chief joins me, but we're still we actively have our homeless outreach team. Our fire department is a part of that. And then we also work with Network 180, and we're looking at really supporting some of the work that they're doing around having, I would say, filling in gaps where we currently have where we have needs for services that don't currently exist. So the county and Network 180 and the hospitals are taking the lead on that, but hopefully by next year we'll be able to support some additional services right in the heart of our city to help people who really are struggling, not just with homelessness, but also with mental health struggles.
What are we seeing in terms of numbers and needs right now? We know that a lot of folks have lost jobs, left jobs, maybe have new crisis situations. What is it looking like? It's a parallel course is the city's effort to really provide more housing too.
Yeah, it really is a parallel course. We know that we need more housing. We need more low-income housing, affordable housing. Fortunately, we've been very successful at securing LIHTC. We support those projects, but it's ultimately driven by our nonprofit housing corporations. We have a number of low-income housing projects that are underway right now, and those units will be coming online over the next 12 and 18 months. So that's great for our community. But we know we also need affordable housing as well as just market rate, and we know that those are all intertwined. So right now, when it comes to the numbers that we're seeing of individuals experiencing homelessness, They're still higher than they were pre-pandemic, although we have seen the numbers come down since the peak of 2020, which is good. And then we're working on a lot of system improvements. So we're working with an organization called Built for Zero, really looking at our current system and how we can be more effective to move people into stable housing more quickly. We're also taking a deep dive into data because unfortunately right now we don't have good, transparent, accurate data always to base decisions on. So we're working with a number of organizations looking at our coordinated entry system and how that can be improved and making sure that it's connected to other services throughout our community. So it's kind of big picture systems work, but I really believe that is fundamental to getting to a more effective system overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to bring up another topic that we've talked about before, but hear the latest on Cure Violence.
Oh yeah. So Cure Violence, finally, I'm so glad that it is off the ground. Urban League is leading the charge on that program in partnership with the city. And then we're working with the national organization, again, looking at data collection. So I want to make sure that the work we're doing is having a positive impact. So Cure Violence, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's an evidence-based violence prevention program. It's in communities all over the world, and it creates a team in community, often in communities where you have a high incidence of crime, and you train people who have relationships with people in that neighborhood or that community. And the team is a diverse group of individuals. Some of the individuals they're considered violence interrupters. So they go out and build the relationships and they try to stop the violence before it happens. But then also there's therapists that work with them who are trauma informed and really try to help individuals really resolve issues before they turn to violence, and then help identify what services and supports are needed to help somebody who may be struggling or really who's caught in that cycle of violence. So we have been partnering with Urban League for several months. They worked with our Office of Oversight and Accountability, so Mr. Brandon Davis, and they hired an entire team, and they were introduced to the community about 2 weeks ago, and they're out doing the work now. And there will be regular updates to the full City Commission next year, so we'll be able to track and see what kind of impact they're having on the community.
Look forward to hearing how that's going, and the tracking is so important. Like you said, data is a big part of it too.
Yeah. The nice thing about data, not to get too into the weeds, but the nice thing specifically about Cure Violence data is that we'll be able to not just track our data, but we'll be able to compare the data that we're collecting and what we're seeing with data in other cities. So we'll be able to say, okay, what can we learn from the city that's doing this better? So it really is this nice network, not just of learning, but also kind of comparative analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question, as we go through updates, how is the search process for a new police chief going?
It is plugging along. So we're working with a national consultant. He has led a number of conversations right here in our community. The profile for the chief was finalized, and so right now he is out actively recruiting and advertising for the position. We're hopeful that we'll have a pool of candidates to consider for first round interviews sometime in January. And then ultimately the city manager will decide who the finalists will be, and then he'll come up with a process to get community input before he makes the final decision. But I always want to remind people that the city commission and the mayor, we don't select the police chief, just like we don't select the fire chief. That's the city manager's job under our form of government. And our city manager is really committed to making sure there's good community input, but ultimately the decision will rest with him.
So there was a lot of effort to get community input on what the next chief of police should maybe have as skill sets, experiences, those sort of things. And now there's the search for this exact profile maybe. But what were some of those things that came out of the city's collecting of community input?
Yeah, it was a lot of qualities around leadership, effective leadership, integrity, honesty. But what we heard, and I actually met with a number of folks too, is that they really want somebody that can have good relationships with community, build trust, work with community organizations around shared goals, build on that community police relations, which we know is so critical, but then also really lead the department internally as well to drive some of the changes that we want to see, right? We want to see the strategic plan implemented. There's a number of recommendations that have come from past studies, and really wanting a chief that can kind of have an inside plan to lead the department and have that align with the goals of what the community wants, as well as build those relationships in the community. So kind of a chief who has the ability to do both, right? Be a strong administrator internally, but also have the ability to work closely and in partnership with community.
Okay.
Those are two different skill sets. So it's
And
gonna
all in one person.
all in one person. And you know, the nice thing is the chiefs, there is a position within the department for the chief to have a chief of staff. You know, and I think any good leader, they identify what their strengths are and they recognize their blind spots and they know where they need to, you know, bring in someone or have somebody on their leadership team that can help round out those skills. So my hope is that we have a chief that does that, you know, a chief who has self-awareness and knows what their strengths are and they're able to build a team that complements them.
Okay, so the relationships with in the community, definitely in neighborhoods, is the priority. Even our current police chief came from that community relationship background. Just wanted to ask a little bit about then. Well, our current city manager is going to make this hire, comes from a city that actually is having some success in this area. I know we've had we've had City Manager Washington for a few years now, but Austin is making some progress in this, had to have some groundwork well before he left. So I just wondered if there's any lens looking back towards Austin at all.
Yeah, you know, that's probably a better question for Mark Washington. I think there's always lessons to be learned from other cities, especially around public safety. But I also recognize that our city and our culture is a bit different. And so I'm sure he's thinking about that. I know with the national search, he's looking at other cities. You know, he has a deep, strong network throughout the country. And I know that he is familiar with, you know, chiefs in different departments and who potentially could be a good fit. But we're hoping to have a really diverse, strong pool of candidates to select from. That's really what our community deserves. So that's my hope.
Okay, well, look forward to that process with some candidates before you by January or in January, and looking for an eventual in place by when?
So I believe the city manager is hoping to have someone selected by early spring, so end of February, early March. That is my understanding. So I think part of it will depend on the candidate. Part of it will depend on how long they, hypothetically, if they're from another community, how long they'll need to transition. So even with our city manager, he needed a couple months to transition. And so I think some of it will be dependent on that.
Okay, and with Police Chief Eric Payne, his exit timeline, are we on track, do we feel?
Yeah, so he didn't give a hard stop, but I know he would like to be done, you know, in the early part of next year.
Got it.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for all that update information. We're going to take a break now. We'll be back after this break with Fire Chief John Lehman up next here on City Connection.
All right, we're off.
All right.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push the creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
All right, it's good to be back here with our chief, our fire chief, Chief Lehman, and I'll let him introduce this little guy who's walking around with us. But I'm delighted to have Chief Lehman with us today. He's been with the city for several years now. Has it been four? Five years.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, it goes by so quickly. So the chief has been with us for 5 years at the city, leading our fire department, and under his leadership, really, I think, advanced the department in many ways, even through accreditation, but also expanding some of the services, which we'll talk about today. And then we'll talk about some of the current needs and kind of maybe some ideas about the future, because we know that we need a number of things in the fire department to continue to provide really good public service to our community. So Chief, for folks who maybe have never met you, even though you've been here 5 years, why don't you share a little bit about your past? Because you came to Michigan and from a neighboring state, but why don't you give a little background?
Sure. So I've been in the fire service. This is my 38th year, and started my career in Illinois, and have had a great career. But majority of that professional career was done with the Aurora Fire Department in Illinois, and I worked my way up through the ranks there, and retired as chief there. Knew that I was too young to really retire. And so I wanted to see if there was anybody else out there that I could be of a service to. So I was so glad to be able to land here in Grand Rapids, and I really think it's been a great fit. I came from a very similar community in size and shape and demographics and everything, and so it was a really easy transition for me here.
Yeah.
And this is Axel that's been wandering around, and Axel is our firehouse dog, and he's been with us for 2 years. And it takes him a little bit to kind of make sure he knows his surroundings, but he'll come up and lay down here eventually. But he's been very good for us. And not only he wasn't hired to be a comfort animal, but that's what he's become to not just me, but many of our staff, and in our emergency operations center when we've had to open that over the last number of times. And so he has that added bonus, but we also use him for fire prevention programs and interacting with children and things like that. So it's been a good help.
Yeah, I'm so glad he joined us today. I remember when he was just a puppy over at Bridge Street. I stopped in to meet him, and he was just a tiny little tyke, clearly super energetic and needed a little bit of training, but he has just adapted and is a wonderful addition to the department.
Yeah.
So Chief, tell us a little bit. In 5 years, a number of things have happened within the department. Obviously, Axel's been a great addition. But you've also led the department through a number of accreditation processes. Under your leadership, the ISO rating was increased. Do you want to talk a little bit about why is that important, not just as a chief, but also as a department and a community?
Sure. So the accreditation process was something that was started before I arrived, and just actually we received our first accreditation the year that I came in. So I don't take credit for that. We have an excellent team that in our planning division that has worked on that and has been just great at being able to make sure that we are holding ourselves against those professional standards that accreditation does. And a combination of being an accredited department and which there's only approximately 370 of those in the world, because accreditation stretches across military bases overseas for fire departments. But you add to that our insurance services organization standard of being held to an ISO 1, which is the top schedule in that grading class. And then we fall into a much smaller category, about 78 departments across the country that have both those designations. And really it's about, when we talk about professionalism in our organization, it's about making sure that we're doing those best practices, holding ourselves to the standards, and ultimately maintaining those and being held accountable. And so we really, we strive to do that. We strive to do that on a daily basis. And we really feel like we are doing good by not only ourselves, but the community in holding ourselves to those standards.
Yeah, it really is something to be proud of, not just within the organization, but really as a community. So thank you for your leadership on that. So Chief, for people who aren't familiar with the size and scope of our department, do you want to give a little, like an overview of how large we are, number of stations? I know some people think that we just respond to fires, but I look at the data quarterly, and I know that we're responding to up to 20,000 calls a year. And we respond to a lot of different types of calls.
Right. And so the Grand Rapids Fire Department consists of 201 firefighters, and we operate out of 11 fire stations, and then we've got a separate training facility. The Office of Emergency Management falls, it's a citywide position, but it also falls underneath our scope. We have the Fire Prevention Bureau. We have an EMS division, we have a training division, and then we also have our operations division and support services division. And the operations mainly deals with the operations of the fire department itself. The support services concentrates on the personnel and kind of business side of the house inside the fire department. So we respond within the community to, as you said, just over 22,000 calls a year. A majority of those calls, roughly 68%, are EMS-related calls where we're first responders. And so our people are responding to those emergencies. They're helping to treat people, patients. They're helping to stabilize patients until the advanced care can get there, and then transport them to the hospital. On the fire side, we do more than just put out fires. We do technical rescues and extrications. We do hazardous materials responses. We do roadway accidents on the highway and on our streets. We also respond to gas leaks and to those types of conditions, lockouts and elevator rescues and all those things. And so the fire department in any community tends to morph into that catch-all for when there's somebody that doesn't know who to call, they call us. And so we've even been called when there's been a bear in the tree. And you know what we do there is just to kind of help and support, but we're not those experts. But we do respond to many different and varied calls.
Yeah, and I know more than once I've been with you in the Emergency Operating Center, and I anticipate with how climate change is impacting, the world, that we'll continue to have these severe weather events. So I know you and I have been in the EOC together as we're trying to figure out how best to respond to severe weather events. But then there's a whole host of other emergencies that under your leadership and with Allison, I know we've had Allison on the show before, our city is prepared to respond to, and there's a lot of collaboration between our surrounding departments and the Sheriff's Department and Police Department, and a lot of that takes work and planning so that if something tragic does happen, we're able to respond quickly. Yeah, and I'll add one other thing. So I get the privilege of usually attending the annual celebration of firefighters, and I get to hear the stories of different calls that they've been out on and lives that they've touched and impacted and saved. And I'm always touched by the number of cardiac arrests that we respond to, and we know that time is so critical, that we need to get there as quickly as possible to save someone's life. And I've heard stories and met people who've been saved by firefighters, and I've met moms who had their babies delivered by firefighters, and it's just as a mayor, I'm really proud of the work that we do, but I think as a community, sometimes we don't fully see the scope and breadth of the calls that our firefighters respond to. And I think that leads me to the conversation that came to light almost 2 years ago when we started really looking at some of the data and the fire calls that the department was going on related to individuals experiencing homelessness. And it was really you, Chief, that stepped up and said, we need a homeless outreach team. So for folks who aren't familiar with the team or how it came about, do you want to share a little bit about that?
So we were having discussions around a homeless outreach team and a need for that prior to COVID happening. But really when COVID happened and we were looking inside the community and trying to understand not only how we were going to meet our own needs, but who was it that was able to reach out and meet the needs of those unsheltered homeless. So there's a significant portion of people that aren't necessarily using the services at Meltrotter, that are just choosing to be outside. And so those people really we needed to understand how we could educate a little bit, how we could assist them with maybe some supplies to be able to prevent spread. And if they were sick, how we could really be able to figure out how we could help get them somewhere where we could help them to also help to prevent the spread within their own community and be able to assist in any way we could. So the homeless outreach team was born out of that need, and we started relatively small with 2 firefighters and 2 police officers. And then we eventually knew that we needed the assistance of some additional counselors. And so we added to the team with some additional support from Network 180 through a contract that we have with them now to provide some mental health specialists and to provide some substance abuse addiction recovery coaches. And so now we are, at today's date, we have a total of 13 people on that team. We are able to really cover responses every single day of the week, so that we really are being able to meet the needs of the community in a way that we should be. And we are also investing in the fact that we value the need to continue doing this. The work that those folks are doing out there in every single day, it doesn't matter if it's raining or if it's snowing, they are out there making contact, and the stories and the success stories that they've had from being able to provide somebody with a bike or a resource. And many times we think about the homeless population as people that maybe are dirty or do not choose to clean up after themselves and just create mess everywhere. That's not the case. And what the homeless outreach team has been able to do is say, hey, you know what, let's provide you with some materials to help you keep this area clean. Because if you're choosing to be here, and let's figure out how we can work with the city to get rid of the waste that's generated. And let's figure out a way, there's mobile shower trailers out there now that are now being combined with services that are helping those people that are choosing at some point not to shelter. And so that team is really morphing into a team that is really able to be in the trenches working. But not only that, but they're also responding to the needs of the business community, and they're responding to the needs of complaints when we're having those issues. And so they're able to kind of play that intermediary and work out those kind of situations.
Yeah. I was so pleased that we were able to get it launched, especially in the midst of COVID. I know we had talked about it for some time, and I'm really glad to see it expand and that it'll continue with city funding. So that's it's a priority for me, but it's also a priority for the commission and the city manager and you. So I just really appreciate your leadership on that. So we're almost out of time. So maybe in closing, and maybe in the next section, we can get to a couple other things. So in closing, just a plug, the department is actively hiring. So we just went through an application process. It closed up, and we're now sifting through those applications. But there's a lot of opportunity in our city and other cities to become a firefighter if that's what your heart desires. You have anything to add on that as we close this section, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back?
Just that I was very happy, in this day where, people are not necessarily finding a large applicant pools. While ours was almost cut in half, we still received over 740 applications for the fire department. And we are right now down to the point where we're trying to set up interviews and move those people through the physical agility testing that applied and get to a point where we can hire a class of 15 that we can start that recruit academy in January. But we have a very good amount of information on our website. If they just go to the city's website and they can connect to it through the department and division section and click on the fire department, we've got some really good recruitment tools there. And we want to get to the point where we just are in this continual year-round recruiting effort where we can always make sure that we've got those people and not have to put somebody off for a year's period of time until our next recruitment period.
Yeah, that's my hope too. And I hope you heard that loud and clear from the City Commission workshop, that we want you to be proactive and plan ahead and hire now for the spaces we know are going to open it up through attrition and retirements. And so really getting ahead of that, because we don't want our firefighters working overtime and exhausted and overworked either. So we want to make sure that we're supporting them. They do a tough job. And so I appreciate that we got this class that we're currently in the process of hiring that is moving forward, and hopefully we'll be welcoming a new recruit class soon. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So with that, we'll take a little break and then we'll come back with Linda.
Wow.
88.1 FM WYCE, a proud member of the Grand Rapids Community Media Center, has been serving the Grand Rapids community and beyond for over 30 years, offering a world of music through commercial-free, independent radio. Head on over to wyce.org today, where you can stream our broadcast 24/7, check out exclusive artist interviews, or make a donation. From everyone at 88.1 FM WYCE, thank you for your support.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
Back to City Connection. Great conversation with you, Mayor, and Fire Chief Lehman. And I was really interested in the conversation that talked a lot about the services that the fire department is really providing when it comes to connecting with mental health issues and connecting with the outreach team for homelessness. We know that's also been a part of the conversation in police departments, and that so many things that are calls that really don't necessarily come to a police officer that has the skill set for that, or even maybe the fire department too. So I just wondered about the dialogue that includes fire department, police department, and addressing some of these community needs as we relook at what is policing, what is firefighting.
Sure. It's a good question. It's a big question. So not only is mental health more of an issue nowadays in both of our organizations, but it has some areas that we're not necessarily well trained on yet. And so a lot of training from our EMS side goes into that mental health and how we can respond to those needs. And part of the reason that we added a very good resource for us is the master's degree social worker. Actually, we have 2 of them on our team that deal with our homeless outreach team. And those folks are able to respond within the homeless community and be able to not only do on-site evaluations, but also be able to do those immediate referrals, take a couple steps out of that process to be able to streamline getting these folks into areas where they need the help that they can get, and then be able to do the follow-up and be able to understand, kind of where to meet these people and engage with them. From a police department side, I don't want to speak for them, but I know that they are also entering an area of being able to respond to mental health issues in a different way. And they're also teaming up with Network 180, who's been a very good partner for us to be able to provide those resources to do that and have a co-response model to be able to maybe take away that emergent kind of threat to a suicide response that resulted in us coming in and trying to really, aggressively take control of the scene and make it safe. And maybe reimagine that a little bit and understand how we can, kind of back that level down a little bit and address it in a different way. But the way that we are able to respond with the police department and work with them enters many different areas of the community, anywhere from our ongoing responses in the community, where we have both police and fire responding to an emergency incident, to our dealings in the homeless outreach team, to our dealings departmentally as just partners in public safety. And so I think right now I can say we have a very good working relationship with the police, and that's important to me that we maintain that.
You mentioned, I think you said 201 personnel among 11 stations, and you're starting for recruitment for a class that starts after the first of the year. How many more positions are you looking to fill? And then how many of those maybe are in the social work realm or the outreach realm?
So we continue to have the discussion around permanently staffing the homeless outreach team, and that will be a budget discussion as we approach this upcoming budget process. But the hires that we're doing right now are really all for attrition. So they're all just to maintain that current force that we have. And so we're not necessarily adding any new positions to the department. These are all just people that are going through the regular retirement process, ending their careers after 20 or 30 years. Some people even longer than that. So that's what that Recruit Academy starting in January is for.
And since the city is always mindful of diversity, tell me a little bit about your recruitment efforts when you're looking to make a diverse crew.
Yep. So we've spent a very, very large amount of time and effort in recruiting for diversity, and so we've got a very good diverse recruiting team, and they have spent considerable time looking at the process and trying to change it to make it more acceptable and manageable to people in all areas of our community. And so they pushed recruiting events out and not kind of made it where you need to attend an orientation here at this time and at this location. They pushed those out into multiple orientation sessions out in the communities, in the different communities around town. We have changed our processes to make our testing a lot more accommodating. And so it used to be, we have the test on this date, you all come, you sit at the same time, you write the test, and whoever passes with this percentage or higher is, on the list. And that kind of has morphed into, we will allow testing in multiple locations in the community. We'll allow testing at multiple times. And we are even at a point where we're allowing testing in the home. Should you, I mean, you have to, it's not as easy as it sounds. You have cameras on you, watching you to make sure you're not on your phone and not trying to, subvert the process. But that's the extent that we've kind of changed the way that we're doing it, all in an attempt to try and increase the amount of diversity within the candidate pool. And that's the way that we can do that, is by increasing the amount of diversity in the candidate pool, we can ultimately get to a more diverse organization. In addition to that, we have just, it hasn't been approved yet through City Commission, but I'm hoping that we could eventually get approval for a cadet program. And a cadet program would ultimately allow us to be able to really intentionally recruit that diversity into young people right out of high school that could come in, that we could really kind of mentor and be able to impact our diversity numbers that way as well.
Okay, well, on that topic, we do have a question. This is from Lucas, and he's asking, what are you looking for in a new applicant? What kind of things do you like to see?
That's a good question. We really like people that understand the concept of being a team player. We want people that understand that we, as an organization, are almost paramilitary. So it's not, it's the way that we operate. We have rank, and we have structure, and we have rules and policy. And so that is, we want people that operate well within that environment. We definitely want people that are honest and trustworthy, that have integrity, that, that live our values, that we have teamwork, excellence. So people that want to be in a profession that gives back to their community. You're never going to be a rich person by being a firefighter, but what you will have is the experience that not many other professions have, which is to really be able to impact somebody's life in a critical situation on a daily basis.
You've touched nerves or enticed some folks, because you said it had 700 applicants. Is that right?
Yep, and that's actually down. In years past, we've had as many as 1,500 applicants, and so, but I appreciate, kind of the new environment we're in, and the fact is that on the east side of the state, I've talked with other fire chiefs over there, and they have open positions. They can't even get any applicants to apply for jobs over there, and so there's a large paramedic shortage also on that side of the state, and that's impacting kind of the way they're doing business. So, but I was very pleased with 700 applicants as opposed to what they're experiencing.
For sure. With our last minute, I want to give you an opportunity to maybe talk about things that are seasonally challenging for the fire department. I know there's, maybe people trying to stay warm and do extraordinary things that are a little bit dangerous. Just some of those warnings and outreach for help kind of things.
Yep. So we really want to concentrate on a couple different areas. One is unattended cooking is something that we have a very large majority of fires that are started that way. The other thing is, as people are challenged and economically challenged, they look for alternative ways of heating their homes. And we want to make sure that when they're doing that, using an oven to heat a home is absolutely not an okay thing. Not having a furnace that's in good working order can't cause carbon monoxide issues. And so we really want to make sure that people understand and are aware that we have a detector installation program. That's all that information's on our website, and they can just call, sign up, and we will get them those detectors installed. But when it comes to heating appliances, any kind of space heaters, a minimum of 3 foot, a yardstick worth of clearance all the way around, clearance around your furnace to make sure that that those combustibles are not anywhere near that, will go a long way to making a more safe community.
We
don't clean out your dryer vent.
Clean out your dryer vents.
It's a big one too. And it's no longer the risk with candles on Christmas trees. Thank God for that. But wood burning stoves and people looking, like you said, for alternative ways of heat.
Most definitely.
Same rule, a yardstick around.
Yep.
And
that is a very good rule of thumb, is just giving yourself 3 foot of clearance around anything that is going to generate the kind of heat that could start a fire. And that's what we live by.
Well, Chief Lehman, thanks for joining us today. And as one final thing, if you can give maybe the phone number or the email address if people want to take advantage of some of the support that you're talking about.
Sure. So the city's email or the city's website address is grandrapids.mi. US. It's .mi.us, I believe. And if they go there, then the link is there to all the fire department page, and they're able to access it that way.
Or they can call 311.
Correct.
So if they call
The
311 and
information
they say that they want to get connected with the smoke detector, carbon monoxide program, prevention program through the fire
Yeah,
department.
and 311 also is it's a great number to use for any question you have, because it'll connect you with any homeless questions you have, anything like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining
One
us
call
on
to
the
City
show.
Hall.
Right.
It's Fire Chief John Lehman here on the Community Media Center's City Connection. We'll be right back after this break.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers in her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply. Meals are shared. A stronger local food economy is built.
GRTV is a place where you can share your videos with the Grand Rapids community. A place you can share your passion, your opinion, your viewpoint, and your story. We offer low-cost classes on video production, free equipment lending to certified members, and a non-commercial channel for broadcasts on cable television in the Grand Rapids area. GRTV is a true free speech forum and will not censor your content. If you're already creating videos and would like to air your show on GRTV, visit grtv.org/shows/submit. To see what equipment we have to offer, check out our equipment page at grtv.org/equipment. And if you're interested in taking our production classes, head to grtv.org/classes. Use our platform to amplify your voice at GRTV, a service of the Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection. And again, our thanks to Grand Rapids Fire Chief John Lehman. Great conversation there, great information. Mayor, we've got a few more minutes, and I thought we could run through a few things. And first one is a question that's not easily answered, but I'll pitch it to you anyway. This one's from Ashley, and we're so aware of the labor shortage. And Ashley's wondering, what is the city doing about the labor shortage of businesses in the city itself? All of that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll speak specifically to the city of Grand Rapids. So internally at City Hall, we've actually been pretty fortunate not to have a significant labor shortage. So back when the pandemic hit, some cities decided to furlough quite a few employees that they considered non-essential workers. But we decided not to do that. So we did not furlough. We made other adjustments to maintain individuals who were city employees throughout the pandemic. And so unlike some communities and even some businesses that furloughed a lot of folks, and those individuals were off work for anywhere from 4 months to a year, now they're having a difficult time hiring people back or to fill those positions. We haven't necessarily had that experience. Now, our influence on what we can do to help fill those open positions that exist throughout many sectors in our community is pretty limited. At the city, we do work around, it's really partnerships around workforce development. So we work in partnership with Michigan Works, and we have great relationships with GRCC. and other nonprofit organizations that do workforce development, and we're supporting their efforts. And then, our city manager is one of the board members of the Right Place. And so we're actively hearing from businesses about the openings that they have, and trying to be as supportive as possible. But it's pretty limited on what we can do. We've talked a lot about this. I'm putting my other hat on, my Rapid hat on. So this has come up quite a bit around the board of the Rapid, and looking at, what are the barriers for people for employment. We know that transportation is one of them. Childcare is another. The governor has been really fantastic in supporting a lot of funding for childcare for families. But right now there's still a lot of unpredictability with families. School days are closed, childcare is closed, kind of inconsistently based on COVID, and if there's a positive case. And it's made it extremely difficult for parents to plan and to also apply for jobs or even maintain a full-time position that they had maybe even 2 years ago. So it's a complex issue right now. And I believe that there's a multitude of factors impacting it. And we have those conversations, but I wouldn't say that the city is actively driving any specific strategy to try to increase, the ability for people to apply for jobs. So
Understood. Yeah, it's a community-wide
tough.
problem, and it's nationwide too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I mean, it's one thing I always say, there are things that we lead on and things that we drive, and then there's a lot of things in the community that we support, and then a whole host of other things that we partner to try to help solve a much more complex issue. And I'd say this one is one that we try to support.
Okay. Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up is it's time again for the neighborhood matching funds, and we've mentioned this. Is this a quarterly?
It is.
Okay, so let's talk about it again. It's time for the city is accepting applications for these funds that go to community support efforts. It's not limited to nonprofits or established organizations. It could be a community group. So tell a little bit about this opportunity.
Yeah, so I love this program. It started my very first year as mayor. It's a neighborhood match fund. It's a really easy application. It really is set up to provide funds to folks in neighborhoods and within our community to implement an idea that they have to, bring our community together, strengthen community. It can be an individual idea. We've had a lot of ideas come forward from youth. We've made the application process very, very simple, and the match is very open. So it can be a financial match. It can be a match of volunteer time. It can be a match of talent. So again, we just want to use this as an opportunity to empower folks in the community to make an impact on their neighborhood. So yeah, we're taking applications again. We do it every 3 months. And if anyone needs any help, they can call the city and they'll walk them through the process. Again, you can go to the city website or call 311 and they'll connect you there.
Okay, and I'm going to forget the terminology, but I believe there were some federal relief monies that were available for local businesses. The city set aside some funds that were for particular sectors of the community that really could benefit more so from some of this boost. And where does that stand?
Yeah, so we did set aside money so some of the money that we received from the federal government last year to support businesses. So we set aside a pot of money and gave out $5,000 to $10,000 grants. Then we increased that amount. And initially we were just doing it in a couple small neighborhoods we call neighborhoods of focus. And then just recently we opened that up to other neighborhood businesses. So if you are a locally owned small business in one of our neighborhood business districts and you had a financial hardship because of COVID and you need some assistance, you can apply for those funds. And that is through our economic development department. So I encourage you to do that. Again, it's a very simple application process. And we really want to do anything that we can to help our small businesses really weather this storm. We know that we're not out of the woods yet when it comes to COVID. Even right now, we know that there's an increase in COVID cases in our community. Hospitalizations, largely for individuals who are not vaccinated. So if you look at hospitalization data, it's largely individuals who haven't received a vaccine. But we know that we have a long way to go before we really come through this pandemic.
Let's get some information out there if you happen to have it in your at your fingertips. Is where are vaccine opportunities available now? I know we're not doing the big centers anymore, but maybe it's out in the community. Maybe there's some mobile efforts even.
So there's a lot of different opportunities.
Okay.
Most of our pharmacies, you can go online and schedule an appointment to get either the initial vaccine or a booster. All of our hospitals continue to provide vaccines at their different locations. Spectrum still has the drive-through, so you can stay in your car if you don't want to get out of your car. You can call a number to get an appointment, or you can go through an app, the My Chart app, and get an appointment, and it's really easy. So you just pull your car around, you make sure you have a tank top or a t-shirt on that you can pull your arm up. They'll give you the shot right while you're sitting in your car through your window, and then you go to a spot to sit and wait for 15 minutes before you can go. So right now you can sign up if you've already had your vaccination, and it's been 5 to 6 months, you can sign up for a booster. I encourage people to do that. I had my booster 3 weeks ago. And if you still haven't received the vaccine, the initial vaccination, you can do that as well.
Okay. And then let's kind of close out with the last few minutes on holidays.
Yeah.
City did the tree lighting. You were part of that. That was last week.
It was Friday night.
Yeah.
Boston Square did their Saturday night. Uptown had they kind of kicked off the holiday shop hop.
Okay.
And they have had carolers and music and just a lot of fun stuff happening for the holidays. And there's a Santa Claus event tonight.
Yeah, we're expecting Santa Claus over at Wealthy Theater any minute now. We'll be broadcasting that on GRTV's live on channel 25. So flip over from 24 to 25 for that. But Santa will be at Wealthy Theater. What other activities do we have going on besides that? And we know there's not going to be skating at Rose Parks this winter because of the great upgrades going on there. What else is happening?
So speaking of that, we likely won't have the Rose Park Circle open until January, largely because of supply chain issues.
Okay.
We just can't get the product in the timeline we thought. Everything's been pushed back. We are looking at other temporary locations to add a temporary ice rink. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have an announcement soon about that. And then, for the holiday, I encourage people, there's different musical performances from the Nutcracker and Trans-Siberian Orchestra and lots of fun stuff happening in the community. But I just encourage folks to get out in your neighborhood business district and, even if it's just 1 or 2 gifts, get out and support those local businesses. They still need us.
Yeah, there's talk about how that local dollar is leveraged so much more than say, and it's a little bit of a push-pull in terms of ordering online is a thing right now for safety reasons, but also that locally spent dollar and how it's so amplified and how it supports this community. Shop
really
Hop and
does.
what else?
Shop Hop, and all the neighborhood business districts, they have different events going on. I'm also encouraging people, if you haven't been to Pack Elephant, it's over at Studio Park. I was in there last week. They're up to, I think, 60 different local makers and, local business owners. They have their product in there. Such a great selection. You can really find something for anybody.
Describe that a little bit. Over at Studio Park, and it's a lot of makers that come together with their wares, and describe how that looks and what it's like.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you walk in, it's a large space. They have different shelving units with different product, and you can pick and choose, and they'll wrap it beautifully for you. Yeah. And then you can purchase it, and then they're the ones that organize the funds to go back to those individual makers. So they have everything from locally made, items for children and youth, to candles, to food products, to cups and mugs and clothing, and it's just they have cards that locally made cards. It's just a wonderful place, and you'll go in. There's just such a selection. They've added. I go in every time I need a gift. That's one of the places I'll go. I kind of have my 7 or 8 places I go often. And I'm amazed every time I go, they have more products from more really creative and talented local business owners.
Last question for you on the holidays. What are some of the, you get out and about so much, where are some of the best Christmas neighborhood lights to see?
Ooh, oh goodness, that's such a good question. So I love Heritage Hill. I usually will take a walk through there for lights. My neighborhood, I live in Fulton Heights, and I love walking through my neighborhood. But downtown is wonderful. So I love seeing all the lights downtown. If you grab a cup of hot chocolate and walk down Monroe Center, or even Jefferson or Division. Division is beautiful. So I think people are going above and beyond this year with Christmas lights. I think they are making up for last year.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
So lots of things to get out there and
Yeah.
see. Mayor, great show. Really appreciate coming together again and doing this. We'll be back after the first of the year. We're setting our schedule now. We plan for the first Monday of the month, 4 o'clock each month. Have a happy holidays. We'll see you in the new year.
Absolutely. Happy holidays.
Thank you. And we'll sign out now. And again, switch the channel over to 25 to see Santa Claus. My thanks today for ACE Team Wilma Squeda and Lorenz Davis standing in with Ted Dietrich, who is ushering Santa to the stage probably right now over at Wealthy Theater. City Connection here on GRTV's Live Wire Channel 24 with Community Media Center. I'm Linda Galash, and thank you.